Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. And I also want to congratulate the honourable members for Devizes, Westmorland, Lonsdale, and indeed Congleton for securing this important debate. Sadly, too many children and young people, along with their families, have been left behind during the coronavirus crisis, even before this pandemic, with youth services slashed, escalating debt and persistently high levels of mental ill health. Young people were already being denied the opportunities enjoyed by their parents' generation. According to the government's own Social Mobility Commission, 600,000 more children are now living in relative poverty than in 2012. Last year, the number of children living in relative poverty rose by 100,000 to 4.2 million, or around 30% of all children. 4 in every 10 children in Leicester East live in poverty. 14% of our households are in fuel poverty. This means that too many families in my community are forced to make that impossible choice between heating their homes or feeding their children. And sadly, the government has not done enough to support them. Like many here today, I fear that the long-term impact of COVID-19 will serve to exacerbate the difficulties that children and their families already face. For instance, the government's furlough scheme is due to expire at the end of the month, yet nearly 1 million people still on furlough are either living under localised restrictions or in cities on the national watch list. That means increased economic uncertainty and distress for too many families up and down the country. The knock-on effect for children cannot be overstated. Indeed, the lockdown has left some children at more risk of harm, with at-risk children less visible as schools and other services close. The number of children referred to children's services between the end of April and the middle of June was 18% lower than over the past 3 years. This is especially concerning in Leicester, as we have faced localised coronavirus restrictions for longer than any other area. This will create, I believe, a great strain on local authority children's services, which were already severely cut over the last decade of austerity. This means that essential frontline services, which many children and families in Leicester East, my own constituency, rely on, will suffer as a result. The amount that our community received in coronavirus support has also been insufficient. At the start of the extended lockdown in July, Leicester received 3 million in support. Leicester, Oadby and Wigston received 3 million in support, which is equal to £7.30 per person. This £7.30 per person is 1,000 times less than the government is paying top consultancy executives for a single day's work. It was recently revealed, as we all know, that consultants from BCG received up to $7,360 per day that they spend overseeing our disastrous privatised test and trace system. This demonstrates the flawed priorities of our government, as they are happy to spend tens of millions to enrich private sector companies, yet are leaving our families who are struggling to make ends meet to sink or swim. In the past week, they've rejected a campaign led by Marcus Ratford, who was recently awarded a well-deserved MBE for 1.5 more million children to receive free school meals. Instead, the government claimed, and I quote, that the best way to support families outside of term time is through universal credit, rather than government subsidising meals. Yet the Institute of Fiscal Studies recently found that 4 million families are facing a significant decline in income if the DWP goes ahead with its plan to scrap the £20 increase in universal credit that was introduced due to the pandemic. It is deeply worrying that the government is planning to cut universal credit amid unprecedented economic crisis. And I'll end on this. It's especially concerning in Leicester East, as last month over 5,000 of our residents claimed unemployment benefits, a figure that has more than doubled by over 3,000 since lockdown began in March. The government must increase the support available for children and families during the COVID-19 outbreak. Young people did not ask for this crisis or choose to grow up as it took hold. It would be a generational unfairness of unparalleled proportions if we allowed their futures to be detrimentally determined because of forces outside of their control. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.